I'm Leland Bittert. Good evening. Thursday, we're going to all gather for a uniquely American holiday, my favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. And President Biden wants a win before we all go on leave for that long weekend. Let's think about the hot topics this year at the Thanksgiving table: gas prices and the wild cost increases, how hard it is to get just about everything, what we like to call the empty shelves crisis here on the show, spiraling crime in America, race relations appear to be getting worse, the rise of China and its new hypersonic missile, the continuing crisis on the southern border. None of those conversations are good for the White House. And as a White House communications director once told me, if you lose Thanksgiving dinner, you're losing. So it's no coincidence that President Biden is strongly considering and might likely announce tomorrow a plan to deal with the number one issue on that list: gas prices, how much it's going to cost to get to grandma's house. Gas prices would go down if the president tapped the strategic petroleum reserves. In the last year, gas prices have gone up from $2.12 to $3.40. That is a 60.3% increase. The oil industry blames President Biden's environmental policies. Here's Daniel Turner of Power to the Future on the program last week.
He is the cause of this. We produce 2 million barrels fewer every day than we did just a year ago. And the reason why we produce so much fewer oil is because, yes, Biden has made it harder to drill.
Tapping the reserves are a short-term solution to long-term problem. And one of the three things the administration could do to lower prices, in addition to opening up more federal leases for drilling. Tapping the reserves is also the quickest thing possible by lowering prices. All they have to do is flood the domestic market with cheap crude from government storage on the Gulf Coast. And when everything else on the Thanksgiving table will cost more than last year, most components to dinner are up double digits. A 15-pound turkey is up 27%. So lowering prices is helpful. The lone bright spot for the administration is the stock market. The Dow closed up again today. The market itself is on a tear. In fact, the market under President Biden is up 20.5% versus up 13.9% for the same time under President Trump. As the president himself will say, there is a bigger disconnect ever between Wall Street and Main Street. Tomorrow's announcement to try and lower gas prices would be aimed squarely at Main Street. Kellie Meyer joins us now from Washington, D.C. with how tomorrow might look. Kellie, good evening.
Good evening, Leland. Well, that's right. The White House is scrambling to do something to change the topic at the Thanksgiving table here. President Biden is reportedly considering tapping into that strategic petroleum reserve, an emergency stash of oil. The announcement coming as early as tomorrow, and it could mean as many as 35 million barrels over time. There's about 19 to 20 gallons of gas in one barrel. And the move comes as Biden is facing dwindling poll numbers over his handling of inflation. Today, defending it isn't just the U.S. facing a rocky recovery from the pandemic.
We know it's tough for families to keep up with the rising cost of gasoline, food, housing, and other essentials. It's not just an American problem. It's a worldwide problem.
And Leland, tomorrow the president is already expected to speak on the economy and on, quote, lowering prices for the American people. We're watching for this announcement then.
All right. So what kind of difference are we actually talking about at the pump before we're, say, going to Christmas? Probably too late for Thanksgiving.
Well, we talked with some folks and some sources here saying that this could mean 10 to 30 cents less a gallon at the pump from this move in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But that may come with some consequences for President Biden, because once he taps into this reserve, he may face backlash from OPEC, the oil producing nations in the Middle East. They could turn around and decide not to increase output. So if OPEC reacts negatively to this move from the Biden administration, we could see gas prices then go back up by Christmas. Leland?
Oh, there you go. All right, Kellie, thanks so much. Great reporting. We'll see you tomorrow when if the announcement happens. Few things can wreck a presidency like high gas prices. Jimmy Carter faced the problem, as did Barack Obama. Austan Goolsbee chaired the Council of Economic Advisors under President Obama, professor of economics at the University of Chicago, and joins us now. Professor, good to see you. We appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Is this desperation, would you say, or good policy?
I don't think it's desperation, but I do think it's temporary, as you described. I have been of the view that once the U.S. became a pretty significant petroleum producer, that the days of having the strategic petroleum reserve so full that they literally could not put any more oil in it, it probably didn't make sense, and we shouldn't run it that full. But this is just a big pool of oil. It's not producing in itself. Ultimately, this is a world commodity, and the supply and the demand is going to be determined on the world stage, not by what the U.S. does.
Reasonable people, though, could agree that the fact that the U.S. has cut production so significantly down 2 million barrels because of President Biden's policies, that's contributed to the rise in prices, right?
Well, I don't. The first part of that I agree with, that we are producing less. You attributed that's from Biden's policies. Most of the industry analysts, I believe, think that has been due to the multiple years of rock bottom prices.
Yeah, well, it's more, yeah.
So that it wasn't economical.
Yeah, fair enough. It's more expensive to frack than it is to pump it out of the Middle East. That's probably one of the reasons we're seeing a boom now in West Texas again.
Yes.
We know that the Biden administration, progressives in general, view fossil fuels as the enemy, for lack of a better term. Fine. Shouldn't they view high gas prices, in a sense, as a success?
Some of them, I think, do view that as a success. I think even if you're on the view that we got to transition to lower carbon pollution, that doesn't mean you want to make the price go up all at once and have everyone invoke a massive transition cost. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm interested as we think about sort of this on a larger scale, because we can all agree that the economic crisis of inflation is a huge crisis, as evidenced by the pain at the pump for President Biden. Lawrence Summers, who was also part of the Obama administration, has been on record saying that Build Back Better, the new spending plan, is going to only make inflation worse. Do you share that view?
Well, wait, no. Summers was of the view that the original rescue, the CARES Act under Trump, and then the rescue plan under Biden was too large and would create inflation. But when he was asked about Build Back Better, he said he viewed it as mostly irrelevant, that in total it was 1/10 the size in the next year of what the previous stuff was, so that it probably wouldn't increase inflation. And I'm kind of on that same spot. I think you can be for or against what's in the Build Back Better agenda. We don't know exactly what will be in the final bill.
Yeah, for
Depends
sure.
what Joe Manchin thinks. But I don't think it has that much to do with the next 6 to 12 months inflation.
Well, I guess let me ask it this way. The White House really went after Summers back in February and March over his comments saying that there was going to be this inflation on the horizon. That's now come true. Would you agree that the White House sort of owes Summers and folks like you who predicted the inflation an apology?
Well, no, I was more on the other side. I kind of had a bit of a public debate with Summers. I still think that this inflation, while higher than I anticipated then, is going to be proved to be temporary, because I think it's a supply shock driven inflation. And so when I look at Germany having the highest inflation in 29 years and China having its highest inflation in 26 years, and the U.S. having the highest inflation in 30 years, that to me, that all looks like it's of a piece, and that piece is not directly related to U.S. fiscal policy.
Big part of the Build Back Better plan, to a certain degree, arguably, as you point out, to what degree, is going to be climate change, somewhere around $500 billion to combat climate change in the broader sense. Again, Daniel Turner on what that means for the oil industry and for American consumers. Take a listen.
If you want to push a green agenda, you need two things to happen. You need to denigrate the fossil fuel industry. You need to make it the enemy, and that's what they're doing. And you need to scare people that the end of the world is very near, and that's what they do with COP26.
Back to sort of where we were, is there an economic reality to high gas prices that it's perhaps incongruent with the most progressive part of the president's agenda?
Because people are getting upset, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the short run, it feels like for the progressives pushing alternative fuels that's coming into conflict with the political reality. I think you've got the second political reality that the linchpin vote here is Senator Manchin, who's from West Virginia, which is a coal state. So it's not in the fuel space, but in the power and electricity production based on coal. How much of the climate plan can survive the Senate, that part is also not clear. The only thing I will say is we've seen over the last 10 years that some of these alternative fuels, solar, wind, and others, have actually gotten the economics of their costs down so low that in many places, they're the most economical form of generating electricity. And we would have to see if a similar thing could happen on the fuel side.
As an economist, also, you have to have the historical perspective. How worried would you be if you were an advisor to President Biden that we're headed towards a Jimmy Carter-esque next 3 years?
Well, you'd have to be worried on a political front versus on an economic front. As I told you, my own view is that much of what's happening in inflation is coming from a supply constraint. That during the pandemic, people could not spend money on services, which is what we normally spend most of our incomes on. So we're having record-setting demand for physical goods in the United States and in every other advanced economy of the world, and the supply chain cannot handle that, and that's why we're getting inflation.
Well, so if the supply...
On the political front, I think they definitely need to be worried, because even if you're on team temporary, you think this is going to last for months. It's going to be till next summer before you start seeing relief, and that's not really on the political timetable that they're comfortable with. Yeah,
the short run, long run debate in economics does not necessarily fit the midterm election timeline.
Right.
Hey, Professor, it was great to see you. Thanks for the time, and happy Thanksgiving. This was great.
You too.
I want to identify the victims that we know of at this time. And I say this with great sorrow. Virginia Sorensen, 79-year-old female. Leanna Owens, 71-year-old female. Tamara Durand, 52-year-old female. Jane Kulich, 52-year-old female. Wilhelm Hospital, 81-year-old male.
That's the police chief reading the names of the 5 victims killed in yesterday's attack at a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. They also injured 48 others in the attack. You're going to hear a lot about the perpetrator of those attacks over the next few days, but keep those names, the names of the victims and their families, in your prayers. The sad reality is those people would be alive today if the criminal justice system had done its job. The suspect accused of plowing into those parade goers, Darrell Brooks, is a career criminal who's been released from jail 2 days prior to that attack. He posted just a $1,000 bond in an ongoing domestic abuse and bail jumping case and was recently accused of running over a woman with his car. Now even the Milwaukee DA admitted this problem, saying the state's, meaning his office's bail recommendation in this case, was inappropriately low in light of the nature of the recent and pending charges against Brooks. DA says he shouldn't have been out of jail either. For however outrageous the low bail was, it might not be an accident, as there's been a real push for reforming the bail system. Just last month, the Biden administration released a, quote, gender equity plan that calls for all but eliminating cash bail. States like New York, California, and New Jersey have passed laws to roll back cash bail for certain crimes. Police say Brooks intentionally drove through the parade. Among the victims killed were some members of the Milwaukee Dancing Grannies, who say they're devastated by the terrible tragedy. We're devastated for them and for their families as this unfolds just a month before Christmas, the week of Thanksgiving. Dan O'Donnell hosts the Dan O'Donnell Show on WISN Radio Milwaukee and broke the Brooks bail story this morning. He joins us now. Dan, want to have you on as much as a commentator as a reporter because you're great law enforcement sources. He intentionally drove into this crowd, says the police, but it was not a terrorist act. What else would it be?
Well, near as anyone can tell, Leland, he was involved in a knife fight or a stabbing or some sort of incident involving a knife at a nearby park. And as he was driving away, he accelerated at a very high rate of speed, but the police chief was careful to say he knew where he was going. I think the prevailing thinking in a number of law enforcement sources that I've spoken to this afternoon tend to agree with this, that because his life was sort of falling apart. Look, this was a career criminal who has had all sorts of brushes with the law. It almost seems as though he had had enough and had decided that he's going to take innocent people down with him. He is going to be charged with 5 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, meaning he was not acting recklessly. He intended to kill the people that he killed. And that is critical here, that this does appear to a number of law enforcement sources and according to the Waukesha County District Attorney's Office, by the nature of the charges that are coming tomorrow morning, that this was an intentional act.
Yeah, intentional, and they kept saying that. So it gives you an idea, and your sources point to this, that they have reason to believe it was indeed intentional, not just reckless. There's so much of this discussion about him being out on bail, as you point out, a career criminal, some very questionable behavior, terrible behavior, I should say, in the past. I get being shocked by him being out on bail, but should we be surprised?
Absolutely not. And anyone who's familiar with the Milwaukee County criminal justice system, as I'm sure other criminal justice systems in other counties from Chicago to New York to Los Angeles, is well aware of this revolving door. But I find it, frankly, disingenuous, disheartening, and disgusting that the Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm is going to try to get to the bottom of this and say this was inappropriately low bail.
You know, it was actually the bail that they wanted. It was what they talked about. It wasn't like the judge ruled something lower. It brings up this sort of larger argument from the left about bail reform and criminal justice reform. Here is Rashida Tlaib, the congresswoman, pressed over her prison reform bill as we widen this discussion out.
I think that everyone's like, oh my God, we're going to just release everybody. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, but did you see how many people are mentally ill that are in prison right now?
No, I know, but the act that you endorsed actually says release everyone in 10 years.
Okay, so we can probably all agree that releasing everyone within 10 years is a bad idea. But there's a legitimate argument that has been made that cash bail against low-income, nonviolent offenders was being used as a punishment. How do you balance that versus the legitimate need of society to be safe from somebody who's then going to be a career criminal and drive their car through a parade?
Well, that's an excellent question, but I think the delineation is the violent nature of the offense. And in this particular case, you had someone who was violating the terms of bail over and over and over again. So when you have this likelihood of recidivism, that he's going to offend while he's out, I think this is a no-brainer. And in a broader sense, whenever you have a violent offense, Leland, cash bail doesn't just serve to ensure that the defendant is going to show up for court. It also keeps the public safe from a time where most law enforcement experts agree a defendant is most dangerous when he is out on bail and facing significant criminal charges that are going to land him in prison for a long time. He feels like this is sort of his last hurrah for a life of crime.
Well, certainly the case here lends to that argument. Dan, great reporting throughout the night, this morning as well. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours if we don't talk before.
Absolutely, Leland. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too.
Thanks.
Obviously, there's only so many pastors they can have. And if their pastor's Al Sharpton right now, that's fine. But then that's it. We don't want any more black pastors coming in here.
Pretty shocking that he said that. There's still major racism problems in America, but not everything the far left doesn't like is racist. How 2 widely watched murder trials show us just that.
Pain hits fast, so get relief fast. Only Tylenol Rapid Release Gels have laser-drilled holes. They release medicine fast for fast pain relief. And now, get relief without a pill with Tylenol Dissolve Packs. Relief without the water.
2 things can be true at once. Number 1, there is racism in America. It's wrong, and when it happens, we should all be outraged. And 2, not everything the far left doesn't like, for example, the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict, is racist.
The fact that white supremacists roam the halls of Congress freely and celebrate this little murderous white supremacist, and the fact that he gets to walk the streets freely.
It is now open season, and that white nationalists and domestic terrorists across this country are high-fiving.
In the days after the Rittenhouse shootings last year, it's understandable why some people thought race might have played a role. But as evidenced by a weeks-long trial, race was simply not a factor in any way. Here's the problem. When you call things that objectively have nothing to do with race racist, it cheapens the real race problems we do have, which brings us to the other thing that can be true. Sadly, there is still racism in America. Here are some of the closing arguments from today's trial in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, a black jogger chased down by 3 white men in Georgia.
They attacked him, they shot and killed him. They can't claim self-defense under the law because they were the initial unjustified aggressors and they started this.
Told you why he raised the gun, because he was afraid that he would be on him within seconds. And the gun did exactly what he hoped it would be. It deterred him. And why ultimately he shot.
We bring in Leonidas Johnson, actor, political commentator, host of the Informed Dissent podcast. Good to see you. Appreciate it. It's so clear that Rittenhouse and Arbery are 2 very different cases in every way, except for the fact that self-defense is being used. Why the desire by the left to treat them both as the same?
Here we go. Again, it's always about race. And we've talked about this before, Leland. It's that manipulative tactic that they use, which they know that they can get into people's emotions that way. But like you said earlier, racism does exist in this country. I often get accused of making the argument that it doesn't exist. Obviously, it does. But you can only cry wolf so many times before people start to shrug it off and say, yeah, okay, there's not really a wolf in the building. When real racism shows up, now you're downplaying it, and you're treating those victims as less than. And we see it all the time with the left. They do it all the time. But here's the thing: just because racism exists, it doesn't mean that it's systemic. It doesn't mean that it's institutionalized. It doesn't mean that it's everywhere that we turn. It's not in all of our relationships. It's not in all of our institutions. But this is what the left does. They take these instances where there may be racism, there may be a racist example, and then they expand it. They use it as an example of institutional racism, but it's just not the case.
It's so interesting. So many of the folks that I grew up with and have spent a lot of time with in the Midwest who believe that Rittenhouse was not guilty, not necessarily a hero, but not guilty, are being accused of being racist now, and they sort of say buzz off. But at the same time, these same people hear the defense attorney in the Arbery case say, there's too many black pastors here. It makes your blood boil.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you have to do a fair bit of mind reading to figure out what the motives are. Rather, before you attribute things to racism.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's a genuine feeling that this is systemic racism and that Rittenhouse is a white nationalist, or is it a way to get power?
It's a way to get power. It's absolutely a way to get power. Again, they know that they can get into people's emotions that way. If I can call you a white supremacist or a racist, then the argument's
then I'm
over.
I'm on the defense all of a sudden.
Then we win. Yeah. So there's this idea that if I accuse you of racism and you deny it, then that's evidence of the actual racism. It's a Kafka trap. So your evidence, you're guilty no matter what evidence is presented. Yeah. And once they make that a conclusion, then it doesn't matter what comes next.
And it's sort of like the Salem witch trials. It's at some point.
Right.
I was interested in this case that this was a black defendant who was acquitted on the same day using the self-defense claim and on the same charges. Andrew Coffey, second-degree murder charges, 3 counts of attempted murder of law enforcement, shooting or throwing a deadly missile, found not guilty on 5 of 6 charges. He was a felon in possession of a firearm, but he claimed self-defense because people who he didn't know were pounding on his door. He shot at them. Turns out that they were police, but he was found not guilty. This is in Florida. I'm just wondering, normally you'd think this would be a pretty big story, and it wasn't. Any ideas why?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Twitter seeing people say, well, if Kyle Rittenhouse were black, he definitely would have been convicted. He definitely would have been killed, all of this other stuff. And then we have a case that very same day of a black guy shooting police officers and getting a not guilty verdict. It's insane. So it's clear why they're not covering it. It doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit what they're trying to push and what they're trying to say here. Yeah. So I mean, you have black, and he's not the only one. This is happening frequently. This is happening all. I mean, the idea that black people don't use their guns for self-defense is absurd.
It was interesting. I saw an African-American father and daughter out around the Rittenhouse courthouse in Wisconsin with. Both with AR-15s as well. So there you go.
Right.
Leonidas.
Were they killed?
No, they were not, and they had every right to be there.
Of course not.
They said that.
Right.
Leonidas, it's good to see you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.
Turkish NBA player Enes Kanter seems to be the only celebrity in America calling out China's human rights abuses, and he's not letting up. So, others going to step up. Brightons researches American national security, authoritarian politics, foreign policy, and China. Professor at the Lyndon B. Johnson School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas joins us now. Good to see you, ma'am. We appreciate it. How closely should we link China's genocide with their military expansion?
Well, Xi Jinping has taken China in a direction that's both more assertive abroad with the military buildup that you were just describing and much more repressive at home. And that's included not only crackdowns on Tibetans, Tibetan Buddhism, on the religious freedom and the political freedom of Uyghur minorities, but also on women and women activists like Peng Shuai, who have spoken out about sexual assault by very senior members of the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, it seems also the more military power you have, the more human rights abuses you can enjoy with impunity, I guess, for lack of a better term. I get that Beijing may not really care about Enes Kanter, but Peng Shuai's issue now brings up the Beijing Olympics, less than a year away. Is that a pressure point for them?
Yeah, I think they're sensitive to their image. Part of the reason why they sought out the Winter Olympics in the first place. China's not a big winter sports competitor, but part of the reason they sought this out is that the Olympics in 2008 really were a high point of their sort of effort to earn international legitimacy. And I think they're hoping that the Winter Olympics will do the same. And now they have an athlete who's spoken very publicly about the abuse of power by a senior official. And women's activism is already very sensitive in China. A lot of women's rights activists have had their social media accounts stripped away. Some of them have been detained and imprisoned. So I think they're concerned that this could spark a much broader backlash. And that's part of why they've tried to stage manage this so carefully and yet so unconvincingly to many of us in the outside world.
Yeah, unconvincingly for sure. And you'd often point out it's the Chinese foreign media, the Global Times, that's so active on Twitter. Which is interesting because they don't allow their own people to have Twitter. So that says all you need to know. Right. Xi Jinping, though, says, don't worry, there's nothing to see here. China's not something anybody should be worried about. China resolutely opposes hegemonism and power politics, wishes to maintain friendly relations with its neighbors and jointly nurture lasting peace in the region, and absolutely will not seek hegemony or even less bully the small. It almost sounds like something you'd hear from Hitler in the early 30s.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just not the reality of China's behavior in the region. Ask the Philippines, ask South Korea, ask Australia if they feel like China's economic clout has been wielded or used to coerce them into taking certain political lines or punishing them for taking certain political stances. I think the answer in all three countries would be resoundingly yes. So not pushing smaller countries in the region around is just not consistent with China's track record on its own borders in the last 5 to 10 years. It's not what Xi Jinping has done.
As you study this, the confluence of Enes Kanter, Peng Shuai, what needs to happen for this sort of smoldering thing of outrage to actually become something like a Jamal Khashoggi moment?
Well, even with Jamal Khashoggi, it's not clear, how much price the Turkish government paid or the Saudi government paid for that behavior. And so one of the things that's the problem here is that as China's international clout has grown, very few associations or companies are willing to pay the financial penalty for calling China out on some of its behavior. That's actually why it was so, interesting and so unusual to see the WTA take the stance that it has, which I think is appropriate to keep the focus on, nobody was ever saying that Peng Shuai had disappeared and was dead and gone, right? The idea was that she was being politically coerced and kept out of public view. And the fact that she's made a couple of appearances, but still hasn't been able to speak for herself in a situation where she might be able to be candid means that those concerns are still there. They haven't gone away. Those media appearances didn't fundamentally address that concern.
Yeah, the list of lack of moral spine by so many is long. You think the NBA, Nike, Apple, Facebook, I could go on and on. Professor, good to see you as always. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family.
And to you. Thanks.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. There's a new migrant caravan heading to the southern border. The group is already top of mind for Texas and for Border Patrol agents. We're going to speak to one of them next. Caravan of migrants left southern Mexico last week for the United States. Video you see right there. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is taking matters into his own hands to secure his state's border. You can see this. It's large shipping containers along the Rio Grande. Behind them, the Texas Department of Public Safety SUVs building a steel wall along the border to deter migrants. And he's also brought in the Texas Rangers, Highway Patrol, and National Guard to backstop an overwhelmed U.S. Border Patrol. We're joined by Art Del Cueto, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Good to see you, sir. We appreciate it. How overwhelmed is the Border Patrol right now?
It's very overwhelmed at this point, and a lot of it is because of the failed policies of the current administration. You're looking at the numbers of individuals that are coming into the United States, but then you start looking at some of the numbers of the individuals that have not been caught. And, the fiscal year just started, and there are well over 25,000 gotaways already.
And gotaways
astronomical.
Gotaways are people we actually know got away, not just people that we don't know got away.
Well, no, that's people you don't know, and that's an estimate of what they believe got away.
Okay, that's the 25,000 number.
And that's where the problem is.
Gotcha.
Right. So, and that's where the problem is. So, thankfully, Governor Abbott is over there. He's trying. But it's going to take an effort by a lot of governors at border states. And frankly, it's going to take a lot of effort from a lot of the leaders within different law enforcement agencies, Border Patrol included, to actually start saying something, being vocal about it, and hoping that this administration starts paying attention and they stop ruining the future that's going to happen in this country if they continue to allow so many individuals to come into the country illegally. And that's part of the problem. You have the shipping containers down there, but they'll find another area to enter. And if this administration continues to allow the lawlessness and they continue to not have real sanctions against individuals, people are just going to continue to come. They've created that magnet already.
So you talk about the people who are the gotaways. Those are people who we have no idea who they are now running through. And we know the cartels smuggle the most dangerous people in a way that they can get away, because if they're arrested, then they go to jail. This just came out. Chief Border Patrol Agent Brian Hastings, Rio Grande Valley, a group of 142 migrants illegal entering in the La Jolla, Texas area. Group included citizens of Romania, Albania, Central America. 108 traveled as families, 23 unaccompanied children, 11 single adults. So you back that out, you've got 97 people who are either families or unaccompanied children. What happens to all those folks?
Those individuals will end up asking for some type of asylum. They will be released in the United States, and we don't know if they'll show up to their court date. In the past, a very small percentage actually does show up to the court date, and that's the problem. This administration has given that free ticket for lawlessness. They're not really paying attention to who's entering and who's not. They're just a blanket asylum that they're allowing for all these people to come into the United States.
You point out the governor of Texas, not only does he have his shipping containers, he also has the Texas Department of Public Safety, Rangers, highway patrol out there. This is a tweet from Governor Abbott. They arrested a bunch of smugglers. The smuggler of this operation is the man handcuffed in the raft. The new Texas smuggling law will put him behind bars for a long time. I can't imagine is brave and is willing to work and to help on this as the Rangers are, that's a long-term solution.
No, it definitely isn't. That's why the policies that were up there during the past administration are the ones that worked. It would stop a lot of these false claims. It would deter some of these individuals, and it would allow all law enforcement throughout the borders to focus on real issues, the real claims, and the criminal element that's coming across. Yeah. Make no mistake, the drug cartels know what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're flooding certain areas of the border, knowing they're moving agents there so they can bring their drugs across.
Yeah, we saw that ourselves when we were down there. Hey, Art, it was a great conversation. Thank you. And I know the agents are really grateful for the work you do as the vice president of the council there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Hollywood star Matthew McConaughey stole your heart in his movies. I didn't write that, but if he's stolen your heart, great. Is that enough to get your vote as the governor of Texas? The political question of the day, does Matthew McConaughey have the heartbeat of Texas? According to a new poll, the answer is yes. In a hypothetical race between the actor and the current governor, Greg Abbott, 43% McConaughey, 53% Abbott, 22% someone else. Beto O'Rourke, a Democrat, is saying he is going to run for the seat. Comes as Texas is changing the corporate world, preferring the Lone Star State over California's Silicon Valley. Some of the biggest companies have packed up and headed to Texas recently, including Tesla, Oracle, Planter, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, Planeteer, that should be. Our friend Eric Erickson with us, host of the Eric Erickson Show and brilliant political analyst. How much of this is political novelty? How much of it is actual love for Matthew McConaughey?
Matthew McConaughey is also known as generic ballot tester in this case. There's a lot of dissatisfaction in Texas with Greg Abbott on the right and the left. McConaughey is the empty vessel to whom people can pour in their hopes and wishes for a better candidate. Who is Matthew McConaughey? He's your character from your favorite movie, and so you connect with him that way. You don't know what he stands for, though. When you do, the polling will change.
He said he was going to sort of run on this radical centrist agenda, and you point out very rightly that Abbott's got this primary from the right as well. For a guy who wants to be president, as Governor Abbott does, it's an awfully tight position to be in.
Yeah, Republicans in Texas are actually very upset with him for some of his business regulation, for the handling of COVID, for some of his education reforms, for not being aggressive on the transgender sports issue. So he's got a primary, a multi-person primary he's got to get through. He probably will get through it, but it will rough him up. There's just a lot of dissatisfaction with him. If you talk to Republicans in Texas, they say he just tried to sound Republican without actually delivering on his promises, and they're frustrated. Democrats, of course, listen to what he said and think he's too conservative.
Yeah, Beto O'Rourke was on CNN after his failed presidential run saying, yes, I still want to take your AR-15s. What about that does he think is going to work in Texas?
Listen, in fairness to Beto O'Rourke, to collect unemployment benefits, you've got to be looking for gainful employment. So he's running for governor in Texas, and I just don't think he's going to pull it off. He has also reiterated he doesn't.
Eric, didn't we figure out from his financial disclosures that he doesn't need unemployment benefits?
Yeah, I don't know why the guy keeps doing this. He's one of the few politicians that made the mistake of believing his press. And you can't run for governor of Texas, say you're going to take people's guns. Even the Democrats in Texas are well armed.
So is he running for something else? Is he running for the cabinet position he didn't get?
I think he's just running for the sake of running, hoping for something. I don't want to delve too far there. I have some inappropriate suspicions as to why. I feel bad for his family that he stays on the road running for some office that he's never going to get. I mean, just for perspective, in 2018, big Democratic wave, he couldn't even beat Ted Cruz. In 2020, big wave for the Democrats, supposedly. Donald Trump, not very popular in Texas, and the Democrats can't take a single seat. And now they've regressed further. So I don't see it for Beto. And frankly, the more he stays in, it becomes a distraction to other probably more viable candidates.
Yeah, you think about somebody like a Henry Cuellar or somebody like that who actually has sort of conservative Democratic bona fides. Unemployment numbers in Texas still doing very well. Obviously, a lot of folks still moving to Texas. I got 10 seconds or so. Any prediction on whether Matthew McConaughey is empty vessel or somebody else fills it?
Yeah, I don't think he actually runs. I mean, he's not even putting together a campaign, which is what he needs to be doing if he wants to run. If he does jump in, look, Texas has a history of getting some novel candidates running. I'm just not sure he wants to do it and suddenly not be as loved as he is.
Well, he's certainly enjoying it now. Eric, great talking to you. Happy Thanksgiving. I know the folks who are fortunate enough to have the cooking at the Erickson house are going to be happy. Good to see you, my friend. Dan Abrams has Kyle Rittenhouse's lawyer next. We'll see you tomorrow night. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.